I love this time of year, especially when everything becomes all glittery and full of light, and the pace kind of mellows a bit. It's a time where I think about lots of recipes, and tonight's recipe is my roast beef rump with black pepper crust with a delicious horseradish and onion gravy. So let's have a look at the ingredients. So before me I've got 40 grams of black pepper, and I've kept them whole. You'll see why later. I've also got 5 cloves of garlic, and together with that I've got rosemary, the perfect herb for beef or lamb. I've also got some white onions. Here I've got 5 medium onions, and of course the star of the show. For 4 people, I've got 750 grams of pure beef rump joint, and I'm going to season with salt and pepper. I'm using sea salt here. So in a mortar and pestle, I'm going to add my 2 bay leaves. Oh, sorry, that's the other ingredients. 2 bay leaves, to which I'm going to add my rosemary, which I've taken the tender leaves off of the woody stalk. I'm also adding my garlic. And after I've done that, I'm just going to tidy up my board of the skins, and then I'm going to start pounding using the pestle. So I'm just going to pound and pound until it kind of resembles a bit of a thick paste. And I'm going to turn my attention to my beef. So the beef usually comes pre-trussed with this sort of netting thing. I don't really use it. In fact, I find it little bit... just that it gets in the way, especially when it comes to the carving part. And also I'm never sure if it's made out of plastic, and I don't want it to melt into the oven. So after I've removed it, I just use some kitchen twine, and I'm going to truss it myself. So you make a loop, you slide it underneath the beef, and then you tighten the loop with a knot, and then you bring it sort of lengthwise, and then here you go, you just go around the beef again underneath your first knot, and then repeat the process. It's really simple after you get a little bit of practice, a little bit fiddly. So you'll notice that the end bit of the joint is slightly narrower. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to tuck it in to the underside of my beef so that it's brought together with the thicker part. And that's going to allow me to cook the meat equally throughout the whole joint. Okay, so I'm just going to snip off the excess twine, and I'm going to place it to one side. While that's happening, I'm going to preheat my oven at 200 degrees Celsius, and I've added some extra virgin olive oil to my black pepper paste, and then I'm going to smear it all over the meat, kind of like giving yourself a salt scrub. In fact, I've got a recipe for a delicious salt, black pepper, and ginger body scrub. If you're interested, I'll do a video one day. So I'm just adding the marinade throughout the entire surface area of the beef, and then placing it to one side. And I'm going to turn my attention now to the onions. So I've given my onions a bit of a brush just to get out any dirt. If they're really terrible, you could actually peel them completely, but these weren't too bad. So I'm keeping the peel on purpose because the peel actually gives a little bit of depth of color to the end gravy. So I'm slicing them into 1 centimeter round slices. And I'm then going to place them in the middle of my roasting tray. And the reason why I'm doing that, I'm going to pile them. You'll see that in a few moments. I'm going to pile them in my roasting tray. and that's gonna act a little bit of like a raised area, kind of like a grill, because what I want to have happen is the hot air to circulate in and around the rump. That way I can guarantee that it's going to be cooked nice and equally throughout. So there you go. It's my meat sitting on top. And also, because I want the juices and the sort of the caramelization to drip down through the onions, it'll flavor the onions and therefore flavor the gravy. So this is what it looks like. I'm then going to add some water, about a glass full of water. So you want to cook this for the first 30 minutes on 200 degrees Celsius. Sorry, can't speak. And just for the first half hour. Then, after the first half hour, reduce it down to 170 or even 160, depending on how powerful your oven is. And that will gently cook the remainder of the meat. And you'll see when it comes out, the onions are beautifully caramelized. The flesh of the onions have gone really warm, and that liquid is really deep and dark, so full of flavor. Make sure you allow your meat to rest. So while it's resting, you can prepare your horseradish and onion gravy. So I'm removing the skins because I don't really need them. Well, I don't need them at all anymore. And I'm placing them into a saucepan. And then don't waste that juice. All that liquid that's in the bottom of your roasting tray is packed with flavor. I'm enhancing the flavor with the black truffle and Chablis wine mustard. You don't have to use this. You could use whole grain mustards as well. But I'm using this particular mustard because the truffle flavor will just give it a little bit of a roundness to the end gravy. And just like when you create a roux, I'm using half a tablespoon of all-purpose flour, which I'm going to mix into the onions. And I'm going to allow this to cook for about 1 to 2 minutes, just to get that raw flour flavor out. Once I've done that, I'm just going to add some water, about 150 mils of water, and some more black pepper, as if there wasn't enough. I really like the pepperiness, and of course, some horseradish. Some people like their gravy to be really, really sort of thin, a bit like a jus. But I'm not making a jus here. I'm making a proper gravy, which is going to go with my meat. And this meat has now been resting for half an hour, and it's now time to carve. And resting it for half an hour is so beneficial because it helps reintroduce all the natural juices back into the meat, and it helps relax the meat, and when you carve, it'll be just like butter, and when you bite into it, it'll just be really tender, really juicy. That's what you like. Juicy piece of rump. I'm serving it with the traditional accompaniments. So I've got some stuffing there, I've got some roasted root vegetables, and some roasted potatoes, and Brussels sprouts, and my onion gravy. See how the gravy's nice and thick? There's still some pieces of onion there. It's not meant to be a pretty dish. And of course, the Yorkshire pudding. You cannot have a traditional British roast Sunday lunch without roast pudding. Sorry, Yorkshire pudding, roast pudding. I hope you've enjoyed this. Hope that you get to try this recipe out for your friends and family. Until the next time, see you later. Thanks for joining me on today's episode of The Sunday Cook. If you liked what you saw, then hit the thumbs up. And if you'd like to leave me a comment, please do so in the field below. Otherwise, I will see you next time on The Sunday Cook.